Right, this is the Grandparent interview about leaving a legacy, not a will. And that we're doing this in October 2015, so I'm about to introduce my parents to the interview process. So, the first question is, what great memories do you have of your school days?
Well, I went to Stanwick Junior School, or primary school rather, and I used to walk to school every morning, and I used to go home for lunch, and I remember really sunny days. They always seemed to be really sunny. My first teacher was Miss Warren, and she was really sweet. We had big classes, there were probably 3 years in a class. What else was in my school?
Probably failed everything.
No, I was head girl. I was head girl at my junior school. I was a good athlete, but not so much in those days. Senior school, I represented my county in athletics. I was quite good at hockey. I was quite good at cooking as well, which has been useful later on.
You finished?
Mm.
But I had 1 term at Dean Village School, where I went to St Peter's School in Kettering. I suppose we used to be driven to Weldon each morning to catch the bus. I can remember jumping over the front seat once and cutting my leg on my satchel, so I got another week or 2 off from school. And we went to Stanford School when I was 8, I suppose. Father was most disgusted because I didn't pass the 11 plus at 11, so he had to keep paying for me the rest of the time. I think that was his biggest regret. What did we do then? Yes, we used to drive down to the main road, or cycle down to the main road, and I can remember going one straight over the handlebars, but that's about it. Stanford School wasn't one of the best days of my life. That's them.
Very good, thank you. What was it like growing up in your home, and what funny stories can you remember?
Can't really remember many funny stories. Mother and father worked hard, and no, can't say I can remember any particularly funny stories.
I think my first recollection of being at home was my grandmother. She'd had a stroke. She was living in the front room, and our next door neighbour used to come round and look after her, and I was called her Aunt Brown, so she was my surrogate mum, and she used to play lots of games with me, and she was very sweet.
I suppose my first real memory was Coronation Day 1953, I think. It was 1953, wasn't it? Where we had a television. That was the first television we had, which was sort of about 12 inches square, wasn't it? And we had a fire in the kitchen, not in the kitchen. Hen roost caught on fire same day, but we weren't allowed out to see it because we'd washed our hair and we weren't allowed out. So we couldn't see it. That was disgusting. And I was a little soldier, wasn't I, for Coronation Day.
I think we had coronation party at our house. I've got but whether that's right or not, I seem to have memories of that.
Mum, what funny stories can you remember of being when you were growing up at home?
I can remember when I was quite small, my mum had this little gosling, and I wanted to hold it, so she gave it to me. She said, "Now hold it tight and don't drop it." And of course, I squeezed it so hard, the poor little thing died. And
I know the feeling well. Being like with me. So.
My mum used to have a lot of hens, so she had lots of eggs about, and they would all be stacked up in trays. And my mum came into the what was we used to call it was actually a meat pantry. It had a stone bench across it, and in years gone by it would have been the meat pantry. And she used to keep her eggs in there, and she caught me throwing them on the floor, so I think I'd smashed about 3 dozen eggs on the floor. What else did I do? I was probably a bit mischievous by the sound of things.
Anything to do with drinking out a lemonade bottle?
Oh, yeah, I did drink some Turks out of a bottle that the decorators had put Turks in a orange juice bottle, and I couldn't drink Turks, and I think they had to make me sick and rush me off to the hospital, or rush me to the doctors, but I survived.
Very good. What principles did your parents bring you up with?
Never ask somebody to do something that you're not prepared to do yourself.
Very good.
That's what my father would always say.
Not sure whether you
Yes.
adhere to that with me, but
Yes, I think my parents always
As far as
encouraged
work
us
is
to
concerned,
help others. My mum always did a lot for charity, so she was always fundraising or doing work for charities. So and I think care for others.
But village life in those days, if that's the right word to say, was more a community minded than it is these days.
Yes.
You very much did things within a village and did all your social life within that village, whether it was church or village hall or whatever.
very good. What did you do in the years immediately after leaving school?
Just worked at home really, other than young farmers I suppose. I used to play cricket one afternoon through the summer, and as you said earlier, I went to Canada for 12 months because I hadn't been away to college. I wanted to get away when I was about 21, and so I went to Canada on a student exchange and had 8 months in Saskatchewan. But
And what did you do while you were in Canada?
I was working on the farm. I did do a 3-week tour of western side of the United States, which, what were the 3 coach loads of students staying at sort of hostels, and I learned quite a little bit those 3 weeks.
What did you learn?
I don't know.
How'd you enjoy yourself?
Yes.
And what made you come back?
Farming wasn't very good over in Canada at those times because there was a grain surplus and they couldn't sell their grain, and I suppose it was because we were offered a larger farm at Deanthorpe, and I came back to run the arable side of the business, and that was one of our biggest breaks, I think, because up to then we were on about 400 acres at Dean, and we expanded up to 1,000 within that year, and I suppose we finished up farming sort of 5,000 acres, which in the 80s and 90s, or around the 2000 millennium, was quite a big acreage. When you're looking at this in about 50 years' time, it will probably be very small.
But so it was basically about coming back to help
Yes,
expand, to run the farm, run that bit of the farm. And Mum, what did you do after you left school?
When I left school, I had the summer on the farm, and I drove the tractor, and I drove the combine that year. But in those days we didn't have I think it was actually a tractor draw and combine. And so in October I went and worked in the tax office. I applied for a few jobs. One was in the bank, which they offered to me, and another one in the tax office, and so I chose the tax office. So I worked there for several years, and then I joined a firm of accountants, which was sort of putting it on the other foot. So
Poacher turn gamekeeper, gamekeeper turn poacher.
Something like that. So that's what I did then till I got married.
And then retired.
Then I retired, yeah.
What did you learn working at a firm of accountants?
It was. You needed to appear prosperous, even if you know, the more prosperous you looked, the better you were perceived by your clients. I probably had the best car of the lesser paid workers, and so I used to get the job of taxi driving people to and from the station. So if anybody wanted picking up, they would always ask me to pick them up because I had a better car than most of them. I think at that time I had an MGB GT, which was quite a smart sort of car. Yes, it was much more enjoyable working for an accountant. I had some lovely clients. There was one old lady. She had one wonky leg and she could hardly walk, and she had very little money, but she'd always had an accountant, and she felt she needed an accountant, but she really couldn't afford to pay us. So I used to go and see her after work, so I didn't have to charge her for her fees. And when we got married, I've still got the lovely little jam pot that she bought me, which was really sweet. So that was nice.
And how did you guys meet?
In Young Farmers Club. I belonged to Thruxton Young Farmers, and he had belonged to Oundle. And we used to have dances every so often, and I think it was probably one of those dances that we met, wasn't it?
I can't remember to be truthful.
It made that much of an impact.
Either at the hockey field, either that or playing hockey.
Well, yeah, he might have hit me with his hockey stick, I suppose.
But Oundle against Thruxton was always
Big
quite
competition,
competitive.
Yes.
And what were the early years of marriage like? You know, or pre or post marriage? What memories have you got of those years?
Well, we bought Glapthorne, and so we did all the decorating. It had been empty for quite a few years, so everywhere needed decorating, which we did all ourselves. Early days of marriage. Oh my gosh, you used to play. Well, did you play bowls?
No, I didn't.
No, not that
work.
then.
It was work, really.
Mm.
It was work. And
What sport were you playing at the time?
none really, because I stopped playing cricket when I got married because the village cricket packed up, and I did start playing bowls, I suppose, 4 or 5 years after we got married, I think. But I suppose I always enjoyed my sport, and yes, probably should have started playing golf in those days instead of leaving it for another 20 years.
Were you playing hockey and squash in those years?
I suppose I played hockey. Yes, I did play hockey and squash. Yes, I suppose squash was my sport in those days. Played a bit of Young Farmers hockey, but that, I suppose we were getting too old for Young Farmers hockey. So yes, I did play squash. But that's about
I used to do a lot of riding and hunting. So I really always had horses about, and had my old pony, which I bred quite a few foals from.
I suppose it was social life, but you arrived only 2 years after we got married, so I suppose we didn't have
less than that, really.
So
it wasn't long between.
So you came along and sport it all.
So then, what was it like being a parent for the first time, and what specific memories can you recall from these days?
I can remember my neighbour coming across and saying, "You're always feeding that baby." I said, "Well, he's always hungry."
I can't remember much about it, to be truthful. I was very...
Well, yes. I mean, I can remember you. You, Charles, would have been about 2, and I was expecting Ruth, and we'd gone up for a walk around the fields. Came back, and Penny met us along the road, and which I thought was a bit odd, but it didn't really think too much about it. Before we got into the house, she said, "I want to prepare you. David and Ben have had an accident. David's gone through the window screen, so he looks a bit of a mess." So, and I got back, he looked a bit like a mummy because he would have this bandage all around his head. And I thought she was a bit worried that I would go into labour there and then when I saw him.
And you
What I was going to say, what was my reaction to seeing
Yes,
him?
you wouldn't. You didn't recognise him. I can remember when when it was Ruth's christening, and you. We've got it on video of you throwing toys over into the next door neighbour's garden, and somebody says to you, "Oh, no, Charles, you mustn't do that," and you looked so mischievously, and you just did it with twice the vengeance.
And after, can you remember? You used to tell me about after you had that car accident about things coming out.
Glass.
The glass coming out.
Yeah. So up to 2 years later, he had glass come out of his around his face.
At the time, what was it? Safety belts in cars were only just coming in really, and it wasn't legally binding, I suppose the word is, isn't it? But soon after that, you had to wear seat belts in the front of a car, and I realised why it was necessary, I suppose.
What happened? How did how did this?
Some silly woman driver came round the corner.
It was very icy though.
Came sideways towards us. We had almost stopped.
Yes.
She hit us, and
But
I
it
was
was-
amazed that I went through it. But
It was very
icy.
icy.
It
You
was
couldn't
icy.
totally
yes.
blame her.
Yeah. Why not?
But I seem to was there a story that maybe a different story where you'd got a lorry coming directly at you and you were going round the.
No, that was when I was in Young Farmers.
What was that? Remind me of this story.
I think I was going home from a dance at Northampton and came round the corner and 2 lorries were coming straight towards me, and I went off the road, went round the telegraph pole and came back on the road and carried on. But your mother wasn't with me at that time.
Yeah. I remember
We'll move on quickly from that, shall we? And what other memories have you got of Ruth and I being,
You were
little?
I can remember you locking yourselves in my sewing room. My cleaner was there at the time, and her daughter used to come with her in the school holidays, and you and Ruth weren't all that keen on her, and so you went and locked yourself. Oh, you've got some friends staying. I think you've got friends there. Had you got friends?
Helen and Ben.
Yes,
Jeannie.
Ben Cheney. And anyway, you went and locked the door in the sewing room, and of course you couldn't open the door again. So there was a bit of a panic. You threw the key out of the window, and I couldn't unlock the door either. So you were a bit worried about what you were going to do about lunch, and had we got to call the fire brigade, and it was the days before mobile phones. There were no mobile phones, so I couldn't ring your dad to say come home, so eventually I think I did phone somebody at Dean and said, could you go up the field to tell David, can he get back, because we need to get them out. And somehow we managed to get the door open before he arrived. But actually, when you were first
I think just going back to that, the person that unlocked the door was the daughter of the cleaner that we were trying to avoid in the first place.
Right. So you couldn't get away from her then?
No.
I suppose the one thing I remember, you came, your babysitter, we were out for a dinner party, and you must have been misbehaving, no doubt, and we had to pick you up, and you came to the dinner party, didn't you? And I don't know what had happened, but the chairs had, one or two of the chairs had broken down, or broken while we were there, and you went to school and said, you know, I went to a dinner party on Saturday night and my parents kept breaking the chairs or something to that. Something to that.
But the first time when you were a newborn baby, I went into Oundle to do my shopping. I'd always taken the dog we had with me in the car, and I did on that occasion. And I pulled outside Coleman's, the newsagent, the stationers in Oundle, and managed to lock went to sort of get the pushchair out of the car, managed to lock my keys in the car with the dog in there and you in there. And I rather went into panic and went into the Coleman's, and they rang Dean to get David, for somebody to go up the field to find David, to go home, pick the key up and come. Unfortunately, the whole time, which seemed endless, waiting for them to come, you were asleep on the back seat in your carry cot and the dog slept on the front seat. But I think if you'd have woken up, the dog probably would have jumped on you, or who knows what would have happened, but I couldn't do anything about it other than smash the window. And so that was a bit scary, my first outing with you.
Which dog was that?
She was called Tosca, actually. That was my first Tosca.
You had two Toscas?
Yes, that was a little black and white dog called Tosca.
And was that related to the dogs that we then had thereafter?
No, actually it wasn't. Was it Tosca? No, because it...
Not Chota?
Chota, yes. Chota,
and then
that was the one, yes.
And then we had Pip and Magic and...
Yes, Ruth
Twig.
used to love dressing up Magic, putting her in a pram and wheeling around.
So,
yes.
What are your greatest memories as a family unit?
And my dearest memory is of our holiday in Botswana when we took you and Ruth one Christmas, and that was my most exciting moment, I think.
Why was that so good?
It was such a lovely holiday because we saw lots of animals. It was nice to be away and do something different for Christmas. We didn't. My mum had just died, so normally we'd have spent it with her. And it was just lovely, the four of us being together, and I think we saw lots of animals. The places we stayed were really, really good, and the Botswana people were just so friendly and welcoming. Disney was another lovely holiday which we went with the Cheenies. That was.
I suppose we only had the one family holiday a year. Basically, we used to go to we went to Tenerife for 4 or 5 years in January because it's easier to go in the winter than in the summer. But we usually went somewhere in the summer for a week, either out to the coast, I suppose. Where did we go? We went to Bude, we went to Cromer, can't think where else.
Went to Oakhampton.
They were special times, yes. It was Oakhampton, in Devon, which was a sporting holiday, I suppose, with the Genius. we had quite a few holidays with the Cheenies, with Ben and Helen and you and...
We had quite an exciting day over at the Cheenies one day when they'd got this Land Rover, and Helen, it was the first time she'd driven it, and I think somebody had forgotten to tell her to slow down when she went round the corner, and so foot flat on the pedal, goes around a corner and tips it over, and all you children fall out. But fortunately everybody was okay. But that was quite fun. Another exciting moment for me was when a point-to-pointer that my dad had bred won quite a big race at Worcester, and that was and won a championship trophy that we had to go and collect at a dinner dance in Birmingham. So that was quite an exciting day.
What other memories have you got playing with your siblings?
I really can't say I really remember it, except it was you who dragged me into golf.
No, your siblings, your brothers,
Oh, with our brothers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not really, no. Quite a big age difference between Bernard, myself and John. So when I was born, John was almost starting work, so it didn't have a lot to do with John. And Bernard was 4 years older than me, I suppose, and so quite a big difference. We only played cricket together, I think. So, no, we were quite apart from each other.
And I don't actually
Your
remember
family
playing
all
that
rode,
much with
no, but
my...
you're all family rode.
Well, we all
all
rode,
rode
and
together.
we had, I can one thing that we had fun. We had, Dad bought us this milk float and horse that pulled this milk float. So of course it was used to delivering milk around the villages, and so when you said stop, it would stop and it would stay there until you told it to move. So we used to go round taking hay and straw to the cattle or sheep in the field, and that was great fun. We also went to a lot of gymkhanas, and Grendon Gymkhana always had a novelty race, and one year it was a donkey derby, and that year we borrowed some donkeys from friends of Mum and Dad's, and the one I had was really slow and it was never going to win anything. Trev's was really fast, but it only went when it wanted to go, and it was half its time it would spend leaning on something, and if your leg was in the way, that was tough. And on the race day, it set off and it was leading by quite some way, and it got to the bit where it had entered the ring, and it stopped and it wouldn't move another inch. So that was that one. Another year they had a pram race, and so it was somebody on a pony, somebody in a pram, and somebody running with the pram. So I'm riding the pony, Trev's running with the pram, and Jim's in the pram, and we're sort of doing quite well, and we're sort of running line second at this point. And anyway, I think I went a little bit too fast with the pony. Trevor let go of the pram, and it's only tied on with a bit of string, with a bit more rope. So there's nothing stopping it. When the pony stops, the pram was going to run into the back of the pony. So I have to keep going until somebody can catch hold of the pram, and so that was quite exciting for a few minutes.
Excellent. Right. So next question is, what was the worst trouble you got into and why?
It was the worst trouble.
Your mum was perfect, and I was almost perfect.
And now for the real
I
story.
got into trouble, I think, when I went home after having a party, an all-night party somewhere over in the woods. Got home about 6 o'clock, and Mother and Father sent John and Bernard looking out for me in the ditches between Southwark and Dean, because they presumed I was in the ditch somewhere. So I wasn't too popular. So that day, which was a bank holiday, I think I cleared off down to the coast out the way, and I suppose that was the worst thing. And the other one was, I suppose, was coming back from cricket. We used to have young farmers play bullock at cricket, and I suppose I had a little bit too much to drink, and my father said, if you can't get up the stairs, you can bloody well stop downstairs. Other than that,
Sounds like a good principle. Yeah. If you could leave no money to your children, just a set of life principles, what would they be?
Work hard, look after your family, and don't ask anybody what you wouldn't do yourself.
Very good. I like that.
Be loving and caring and respect other people. Work hard. Enjoy life.
Good. Very good. If you could live your life again, what, if anything, would you have done differently?
I would have gone to university. That was always my one big regret, that when I was at school, I did find exams a bit stressful. And my parents were never very keen for me to go to university. We'd always have lots of horses at home, and that was their big love, and that was more important than anything else. So they certainly didn't encourage me to go to university. In fact, they discouraged me. And I had always, most of my school life, I wanted to be a PE teacher. And when it came to exams, and somebody, a friend of mum's, called round, and she worked at Unilever, and said, why don't you're leaving school, why don't you come and work for me? And I thought, sounds a good idea. Maybe I won't go on for A-levels. And so I left, and I didn't actually go and work for her, but it made me think, maybe I didn't want to go to university. But that was my one big regret, really.
What would you have done at university if you could have done so?
Well, I'd have gone on to do to teach PE, but what subjects? So I don't know. I'd have done maths certainly, but I don't know what else. We didn't have there wasn't very good career guide. Well, in fact, it was non-existent career guidance. So there was no guidance as to what A-levels to take. And I was always good at maths, so maths would have been a first choice. And I think that was another reason why I sort of left school rather than going on, because I didn't have another obvious choice to do for A-level. There was just never really anyone there to give you any guidance as to what else you could do, what else would be a good thing for me to do.
So what lesson have you learnt from that? What would you tell somebody now?
That if you want to do something, then don't be put off. Stick at your guns and do it. Because it was my one big regret that I didn't go to university, and that's what I wanted to do.
Very good. Dad?
I suppose I ought to have gone to university. I drifted back to the farm, mainly because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I think the headmaster, Basil D, did ring my parents up and say, why is he leaving? But I think I probably felt guilty because I was still being paid for at school, a public school. I suppose if I hadn't have done that, I would have gone into banking or accountancy. But if I'd gone to university, it would have been a different thing. But I don't think I could have bettered myself much more than farming. Farming has been quite a good life to us. We've been our own bosses and
the farming's had good
years. But we've had some good years. Yes.
And knowing what you know now, what lesson have you learned from that, and what lesson would you share with us as a result of what you have learned?
everyone's different, aren't they? I'm not sure I've got any great lessons for anybody. Do whatever you wish.
That's a lesson in itself, I think.
Get your aim and go for it. Especially, I suppose, if you're good at any one good sport, and I suppose that means the whole thing in life, whether that's career or whatever it is. If you think you're good enough, go and have a go. And if you're not, if you're not quite good enough, because whatever sport it is, you need to be that 0.5% of the best. And but you will always regret not having a go at it if you want to do something.
I agree. You said that to me. If you don't have a go at financial services, you'll never know whether you could do it.
No.
So I think that's brilliant.
I think you've always been very dedicated to the farm, and if there was a job needed doing on the farm, you would always do it before going out for the day, whereas some of our friends and relations would think, oh well, I'll do it tomorrow, and then of course it rains tomorrow and you can't do your job, and so you've always put work as a priority.
Very good, thank you. What's the funniest experience you've had in your life?
I must have had quite a boring life because I can't think of anything.
There's lots of funny things you've done. It's just a question of recalling them.
Well, it is. Yeah.
I thought of the one earlier, but I've forgotten what it was now.
Well, I think one of the funniest things that you could tell us about Mum was your 40th birthday.
Yes. On my 40th birthday, David, your dad, took me to the races down at Newbury, and we have a lovely day at the races, and then we fly home at this rate of knots, we were expecting just close my mum and dad and Ben and Penny for supper, but that was a very simple supper, and then when we get home, I'm ushered into the front room, and I can't even go upstairs and change. And then all our friends arrive, which was totally unbeknown to me, and they all arrive in a horse box, and we have some are dressed up in horse costumes, some are dressed up as jockeys, and some are dressed up as grooms. So we have this parade of horses around our living room, and horses, jockeys, and whatever, and then they all go out in the horse box. So that was quite exciting.
Dad, what's one of the funniest experiences you can think of? I think you saying something about around your 21st birthday, was it?
Well, it's a bit boring, really. I only had for my 21st present, we did have a party, and they gave me a wooden spoon because they thought I was the biggest.
It was the biggest wooden spoon you I've ever seen.
So why did they think you were the biggest stirrer?
Because I always have been, I suppose, basically.
And what memories, to sum up, what memories have you got of your parents? What memories do you want to tell us about your mum and dad?
Well, my mum and dad, my dad was born and brought up on a farm. His father was in the First World War, and after the First World War he came back from the war and decided he wanted to stay in the army and give up his farm, which he did. And so my dad, he went to Kimbolton School as a boarder, and when he finished school he went to work for Bletsoe and Son at Thrapston as a land agent, and auctioneer, and that's where he met Mum, who lived in the next village, and they got married during the war, and they took on the farm at Stanwick. They had no money. when they took the farmhouse on, there were chickens living up in the upstairs bedroom, and it was pretty awful by all accounts. My childhood was spent on ponies pretty well all the time. That was our life, was the farm and ponies. And we used to, every Saturday we would go off to gymkhanas, and my two brothers and myself all used to ride, and we were very successful. We won lots of prizes and rosettes. Both my grandfathers died before I was born. One grandmother died when I was about 3 or 4, and the other one was after we were together, I think. Grandmother died, wasn't it? Probably not then. Anyway, she lived for many years, but she's not the sort of grandmother you ever got close to. She was quite Victorian and very sort of, children should be seen and not heard, and so we had a particularly close relationship, really. Mum and Dad were always working. Mum always had chickens and pigs, and she'd be always out on the farm. One of my jobs was to collect the eggs. I remember one day putting my hand in a nest box and putting it on something furry, which must have been a rat, which was pretty horrible. Your turn. I think of something else.
I think my grandfather started farming in the 30s at Welford. His family had always been in the agricultural world. I think they came out from Buckinghamshire originally, Chesham, I think. I think my father was born in Horton, just south of Northampton. His father farmed at Portley Ford in Welford, and then I suppose father's mother died. Yes, father's mother died when he was seeing my mother occasionally. So they got together then, I think, and then they moved to Dean in 1939. John was born in 37, and what was it, 270 acres at Dean. He wanted a bigger farm to milk more cows, and that's where we've been based ever since. I suppose we got married in 75. We bought Glapthorne, a small farm in Glapthorne, and then in 89 we moved to here at Seaton, and I suppose as a farming family we all stayed together. 3 brothers farmed together instead of splitting up. So my grandparents had all died except father's father, who used to live with us a little bit, but I hardly remember. Oh no, mother's mother was alive, wasn't she, until I think she died mid-70s, I think.
So how many brothers and sisters did your father have?
Father had 1 brother and 2 sisters. 2 sisters, both married people at Northampton Way, the Litchfields, who lived at West Haddon, and the other one married a Russell who was at Brayfield, wasn't it?
Quite a coincidence.
And I suppose my mother had what did she have? 2 sisters and a brother. The brother milked the cows at Dean for us. He worked for us for quite a while, until he retired. But that's roughly where we come from.
My father, he had relations, Litchfield as well, so we are actually related but only through marriage. But my father was married, 2 brothers married 2 sisters, so my dad's brother was married to my mum's sister. So that cuts your relations down by half. So I don't really have that many relations. Dad has 3 brothers. The eldest had 2 children, although their daughter was spina bifida and she died when she was about 10. And then another brother, he had 1 daughter, and then my Uncle John had 1 son, and then Mum had 2 sisters, and they each had a son.
I suppose going back to what have we done as families, Christmas, we've always had big family Christmases, and I know your mum's family did as well. At Christmas everyone seemed to get together and go round from each family, so you'd have parties for 3 or 4 days in a row. But I suppose it was a great big family community in those days, more so than nowadays.
One thing you mentioned is that you stuck together as 3 brothers as a farm. Is there a particular lesson that you learned from how did that work? Because obviously that didn't work for so many other people. So how did you guys make that work that so many others didn't? It was a family business.
I suppose we were soft, really.
No, but
No,
you all
we
had
all
your
got
own.
on together,
You all had
but
your
I
own
did the
individual.
arable, Bernard did the livestock, and John was the mechanic foreman type of one, so we all had our own little decision making to do, and that's why we did it.
So you basically, the key was delegation to the different roles. Okay, brilliant. Is there one last life principle that you'd like to give us now at the end of this fantastic summary?
It's past our bedtime.
One last pearl of wisdom that you'd like to share with the future Reading generations?
Oh gosh, I should come up with something
Really profound.
really profound here, don't I? Be loving and caring, and to a certain extent do what you want to do, but as long as it's not to the detriment of somebody else. Be your own person.
And work for the community.
Yeah, help others.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It's been brilliant to listen to it. I hope it's been enjoyable to do it.
I'm a bit worried Carol's got bored with it.
Thanks.
Excellent.
Isn't it finished yet?
Right. Well,
Right. Thank you very much. That is the end of the Reading family interview for this generation.
We'll do another one. We'll do another one in 20 years when we're still here.
Excellent. We look forward to that one. You put a bit more thought into some of the questions next time.